They say social media can change your life in an instant. Sometimes it's a blessing. Sometimes it becomes your final chapter. Today we're talking about Zara, a 48-year-old mother of 4 who thought she'd finally escaped her nightmare. She'd survived years of abuse, rebuilt her world from scratch, and found love when she least expected it. It's a quiet Sunday evening. Zara's in her cozy living room, practically glowing as she scrolls through the flood of congratulations on her phone. Family calling, friends commenting, everyone celebrating her happiness. For the first time in forever, she's allowing herself to dream about white dresses and honeymoon plans. She snaps a photo, simple, radiant, full of pure joy. Her caption talks about second chances, about God's perfect timing, about love finding you when you've given up hope. She hits share and sets her phone aside, probably already thinking about cake flavors and wedding venues. That was Sunday night. By Tuesday morning, Zara was dead. Now before you think random crime or wrong place, wrong time, let me stop you right there. This wasn't coincidence. Someone had been monitoring Zara's every move online. Someone who believed her happiness was a personal attack on them. Someone who saw that engagement ring as a declaration of war. The police have their suspect. The family has their theories. The community is split down the middle about guilt and innocence. But here's what we need to figure out. Can sharing your joy online become a death sentence? When you've escaped abuse and built a new life, what kind of person decides you were never truly free to begin with? If you believe every victim's story deserves to be told with truth and respect, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Journal. Drop a comment telling us where you're listening from, because we're about to dive deep into a case that'll make you question everything about love, freedom, and the price of happiness. Let's go back to the beginning, when love felt infinite and red flags looked like romantic gestures. Zara and Deshaun met in their early 20s at a community cookout in Atlanta. She was fresh out of college with dreams of teaching, wearing a sundress that made her look like pure sunshine. He was the kind of fine that made girls forget their own names. Smooth talker, perfect smile, knew exactly how to make a woman feel like she was his entire world. Picture Deshaun sliding up to her by the dessert table, offering to fix her a plate, turning on that charm that could melt butter. Beautiful, you got the most gorgeous smile I've ever seen, and you know Zara was blushing from head to toe. They started dating, and honey, it was like something out of a romance movie. Deshaun picking her up in his freshly detailed Charger, taking her to nice restaurants, holding her hand during church service. He charmed her parents, impressed her friends, and soon everyone was asking when these two were going to make it official. And they did. Beautiful ceremony with all their people watching, throwing rose petals, taking pictures, believing in forever. The babies came, for gorgeous children with Zara's gentle spirit and Deshaun's striking features. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, family portraits. From the outside, they looked blessed beyond measure. But behind closed doors, Deshaun had some very specific ideas about what a wife should be. It started subtle, little comments about her friendships. Why you always texting Keisha? You got responsibilities at home. Then critiques about her appearance. You wearing that to Target? What message you trying to send to these men out here? Zara, young and in love, thought maybe he was just protective. Maybe his love was so deep he couldn't stand other men even looking at her direction. She started choosing outfits more carefully, cutting conversations short, declining girls' nights. But control is like poison ivy. Give it an inch and it spreads everywhere. Deshaun began checking her phone obsessively, interrogating every notification. He demanded detailed schedules of her whereabouts. If a grocery run took longer than expected, there was an inquisition waiting at home. You think I'm stupid, Zara? You think I don't see what you're really doing out there? The children learned to tiptoe around Daddy's moods. They'd disappear to their rooms when Mama and Daddy had their discussions that always ended with Mama's tears and doors slamming. Deshaun's mother made everything worse. Every time Zara tried confiding in family about what was happening, somehow word got back to Deshaun's mama, who'd call Zara directly. Now, sweetie, you know my son adores you. Maybe if you put more effort into being the wife he needs, y'all wouldn't have these little problems. It's like drowning in a fun house. Everyone telling you the water isn't real, that you're being dramatic, that maybe the problem is you. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you should just be grateful. But late at night, when the house was quiet and Deshaun was sleeping, Zara would stare at the ceiling and remember who she used to be. The girl with ambitions and opinions and friends who called just to laugh. She'd wonder where that girl went, and if she'd ever find her way back. Some nights change everything. For Zara, That night came after years of walking on eggshells, years of her spirit being systematically broken down piece by piece. It started over something trivial, maybe dinner being cold, or one of the kids being too loud during Deshawn's TV show. But this time was different. This time, when Deshawn started yelling and Zara tried to walk away like she'd done 1,000 times before, she kept walking. She was exhausted, tired of the shouting, tired of the accusations, tired of suffocating in her own home. That's when Deshawn grabbed her wrist, spun her around, and everything shattered. The backhand came first, hard enough to make stars dance in her vision. But when she tried to protect herself, tried to push him away, that's when he completely lost control. Her wrist. The delicate bones in her right wrist that she used to braid her daughter's hair, to grade her students' papers, to wipe away tears. The sound of those bones snapping was like a gunshot in the silence, except the gun was her husband's hands, and the target was her body. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but the terror was worse. Because looking at Deshawn's face in that moment, seeing what he was capable of, Zara realized she might not survive the next time. The children heard everything. They always do. They heard Mama screaming, Daddy raging, and then that awful silence that followed. When the paramedics arrived, because even Deshawn knew he'd crossed a line, Zara's youngest was hiding in the closet, trembling. At the hospital, with her wrist in a cast and her face swollen beyond recognition, Zara faced the hardest decision of her life. "Ma'am," the nurse said gently, "I've seen this pattern before. If you don't take action now, it's going to escalate. Next time could be fatal." Zara thought about her babies at home, about the fear in their eyes, about the woman she used to be who never would have tolerated this treatment. And for the first time in years, she found her voice. "Yes, I want to press charges." The courtroom was a battlefield. On one side sat Zara's supporters, family, friends, co-workers who'd watched her struggle. On the other side sat Deshawn's people, led by his mother, who glared at Zara like she was Satan himself. The prosecution's case was ironclad. Hospital photos showing Zara's injuries. Medical records documenting the fractures. Testimony from the children who witnessed their father's violence. But Deshawn's mama had her own narrative ready. She told anyone who'd listened that Zara was lying, that she was destroying a good man over some little disagreement. She organized letter campaigns to the judge, brought character witnesses who testified about Deshawn's community service and church attendance. "That woman is pure evil," she announced to news cameras. "She's trying to steal my son from his children over nothing. Y'all don't know her like I do. She's manipulative and vindictive. My son is the real victim here." Amazing how some people can look at x-rays of broken bones and see manipulation, how they can examine medical evidence and see lies, how they can watch traumatized children testify and see nothing at all. But evidence doesn't lie, even when people do. Deshawn was convicted of aggravated domestic assault and sentenced to 18 months. Not nearly enough, but something. While Deshawn served his time, Zara filed for divorce and moved her children across town. Starting over with 4 kids on a teacher's salary wasn't easy, especially when your ex-husband's family was telling everyone you were an unfit mother and a liar. The divorce proceedings were vicious. Deshawn's family hired lawyers who tried to paint Zara as mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. They made her relive that night repeatedly, dissecting every detail, searching for contradictions that might prove she was lying. But Zara held firm. She had to, for her children, for herself, for the woman she used to be who deserved so much better. When the divorce was finalized, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not quite happiness, but hope. The possibility that maybe she could build a life where love didn't come with conditions and consequences. 6 years after the divorce, Zara met Isaiah at a school fundraiser. He was a soft-spoken counselor who worked with at-risk youth, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke and never raised his voice even when he was passionate about something. Isaiah saw Zara, really saw her. Not as a domestic violence survivor with baggage, not as a single mother with complications, but as a woman deserving of gentle love and patient kindness. He was everything Deshawn wasn't. Calm where Deshawn was volatile. Consistent where Deshawn was unpredictable. He asked Zara about her day and actually listened to her answers. He played video games with her sons and braided her daughter's hair without being asked. "Mama's different now," her oldest told her aunt. She laughs at silly movies again. She hums while she's cooking. She doesn't flinch when people raise their voices anymore. For 2 years, Isaiah proved himself trustworthy. He met the children slowly, respectfully, understanding they'd been hurt before and might not be ready to welcome him immediately. He attended school plays and basketball games, not trying to replace their father, but simply showing up as someone who cared about their happiness. He understood the complexities of Zara's situation, the custody issues, the difficult conversations with Deshawn, the whispers from people who still believe Deshawn's version of events. Instead of running from the complications, Isaiah stepped up and stood beside her through everything. When he proposed, it was beautifully simple. Just the two of them on her back patio after the kids had gone to bed, talking about their dreams for the future. He got down on one knee right there under the string lights, with the crickets singing and the whole neighborhood peaceful around them. "Zara," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I've learned that real love means seeing someone's scars and loving them even more because of the strength it took to survive. Will you marry me?" She said yes through tears of pure joy, tears that had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with finally believing that good things could happen to women like her. Women who'd been broken. Women who'd been blamed. Women who'd been brave enough to start over. The ring wasn't the most expensive or elaborate, but it was chosen with love and given with respect, and that made it priceless. 3 days later, Zara did what any excited woman would do. She shared her joy with the world. The photo was perfect. Her hand with the ring, Isaiah's hand covering hers protectively, both of them beaming like they'd discovered buried treasure. "After everything I've endured," she wrote, "I never thought I'd find love like this. But God has perfect timing. Isaiah, thank you for seeing me for who I truly am and loving me completely. I can't wait to be your wife." The response was overwhelming. Friends and family who'd watched Zara struggle and rebuild were celebrating like they'd won the lottery. Heart emojis and congratulations flooded the comments. People shared their own stories of finding love after heartbreak, of second chances and new beginnings. "Girl, you deserve every bit of happiness in the universe. Isaiah is getting himself a queen. Cannot wait to see you walk down that aisle." Even some people who'd sided with Deshawn during the divorce were commenting with support. Maybe they'd realized the truth over the years. Maybe they'd seen how Zara had rebuilt her life with grace and dignity. Maybe they were just tired of carrying other people's anger. But not everyone was celebrating. Some people were studying that announcement like a coded message they needed to decipher. Some people were making phone calls, having conversations, making plans that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with ownership. Because there are people in this world who believe that if they can't have you, nobody should. People who think your happiness is somehow stolen from their own. People who'd rather see you destroyed than see you free. For 2 blissful days, Zara lived in a bubble of joy. She went to work, showed off her ring, and made plans to go dress shopping. She called her mother, who cried happy tears and immediately started planning what she'd wear to the wedding. She texted with Isaiah constantly, sharing silly memes and talking about honeymoon destinations. But on the second day, something felt off. Zara woke up with an uneasy feeling, like invisible eyes were watching her every move. She tried to dismiss it as pre-wedding jitters. After all, getting engaged is huge, especially when you have 4 children and an ex-husband who's never been supportive. Her phone kept ringing with calls from blocked numbers. When she answered, there was only silence, then a click. After the 3rd call, she stopped answering unknown numbers altogether. At work, her best friend noticed she seemed distracted, jumpy. "Girl, what's wrong? You should be floating on cloud 9 right now." "I don't know," Zara said, glancing toward the window. "Just feel like someone's watching me. Probably just nerves." But it wasn't nerves. During lunch, she looked out at the school parking lot and could have sworn she saw Deshawn's car idling across the street. When she looked again, it was gone. Maybe it was never there. Maybe her mind was playing tricks. That afternoon, she received a text from an unknown number. "Saw your announcement. We need to talk." Zara stared at the message, her hands trembling. She recognized that tone, that demand disguised as a request. But it had been 7 years. 7 years since the divorce, since the restraining order, since she'd built a life that didn't include Deshawn's control and rage. She showed the text to Isaiah when he picked her up from work. "Should I be worried?" she asked. Isaiah read it twice, his jaw tightening. "Block the number. If he keeps contacting you, we call the police. You don't owe him any conversations, Zara. You don't owe him anything." That night, alone after Isaiah had gone home and the children were asleep, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was approaching. She checked all the locks twice, closed all the curtains, kept her phone within arm's reach. The next morning, she didn't show up for work. When Zara's principal called her house and got no answer, then called her cell and it went straight to voicemail, they knew something was wrong. By lunch, they were concerned enough to call Isaiah. I talked to her last night, he told them. She seemed anxious about something, but she said she was just going to stay home and do some planning. Let me go check on her. When Isaiah arrived at Zara's house, her car was in the driveway. The front door was unlocked, which wasn't like her at all. He called her name as he walked through the house, but the silence that answered was the kind of silence that makes your blood run cold. He found her in the kitchen, and the sight broke something in him that would never fully heal. She was gone. The woman who'd survived domestic violence, who'd rebuilt her life from nothing, who'd finally found love again. She was lying there like someone had deliberately crushed a flower. The police came. The paramedics came. The children came home from school to find their house full of strangers and their mother gone forever. Isaiah tried to shield them from seeing anything traumatic, but children always absorb more than we want them to. The investigation began immediately, but in a close-knit community where everyone knows everyone's business, the rumors started even faster. Some whispered about a burglary gone wrong. Others suggested maybe Zara had enemies nobody knew about. A few brave voices wondered aloud if Deshaun might be connected to his ex-wife's death, occurring just 2 days after she announced her engagement. When police went to question Deshaun, they found him at his mother's house, sitting at her kitchen table with a story rehearsed like a church recital. He'd been there all night, his mother insisted. They'd been watching old movies and sharing leftovers. He was devastated by the news, she claimed. Absolutely heartbroken that the mother of his children was gone. That poor man, Deshaun's mother told reporters. First, she ruins his life with those false abuse claims, and now she's gone and gotten herself killed. It's just tragic. But the children weren't going to Deshaun. According to Zara's will, they were going to her sister, the one who'd supported her through the divorce, who'd helped her rebuild, who understood exactly what kind of man Deshaun really was. That's when Deshaun's grief transformed into rage, and his mother's sympathy became conspiracy theories, and the ugly truth about this family started spilling out like poison from a broken container. When someone dies 48 hours after announcing their engagement, detectives don't call it coincidence. They call it motive. And when the victim has documented history of domestic violence with her ex-husband, they call it suspicious as hell. Detective Rivera had worked cases like this before, too many times. Ex-husband with history of violence. New relationship threatening his control. Victim found dead just when she's found happiness. It's the same tragic story with different names. But knowing what happened and proving it are entirely different challenges. The crime scene told a subtle story. No forced entry. No obvious struggle. No witnesses reporting anything unusual. Just Zara, gone, in the kitchen where she'd made thousands of meals for her children, where she'd planned her wedding just days before. The timing was chilling. She was killed that Tuesday morning, right after her children left for school. Someone knew her routine. Someone had been watching. Deshaun's alibi seemed solid initially. His mother swore he'd been with her all night, watching Turner Classic Movies and eating her famous peach cobbler. She had text messages as proof. But alibis from devoted mothers aren't worth much, especially when that mother has spent 7 years defending her son against domestic violence accusations. Detective Rivera started digging deeper. Cell phone records showing where Deshaun's device had been pinging. Security footage from businesses along various routes. Credit card transactions. Banking records. Then there were the children's statements. The oldest had the most to share. Mama was excited about getting married, but she was scared too. She kept checking the locks and looking out windows. She got creepy text messages the day before. She showed one to Isaiah. That text message, saw your announcement. We need to talk, became crucial evidence. Police traced it to a prepaid phone purchased with cash the same day Zara posted her engagement news. Store security cameras were conveniently malfunctioning, but the timing was too coincidental to ignore. When confronted, Deshaun's story started shifting like sand. First, he claimed he'd never texted Zara. Then he admitted he might have reached out to congratulate her, as the father of her children. Then he said maybe he wanted to discuss how her remarriage might affect custody arrangements. Look, Deshaun told Detective Rivera, I'm not going to pretend I was thrilled about her getting married again. Those are my children, she's bringing another man around. I had legitimate concerns. But hurt her? Kill her? That's insane. I loved that woman, even after everything she put me through. Everything she put him through. Not what he put her through. Even with Zara in the morgue, Deshaun still saw himself as the victim. But the evidence kept accumulating. Phone records showed Deshaun's cell pinging near Zara's neighborhood at 8:52 a.m., 20 minutes after her children left for school and 38 minutes before Isaiah found her body. Security footage from a hardware store showed someone matching Deshawn's description purchasing zip ties and cleaning supplies the day before Zara's death. Detective Rivera discovered more. Deshawn's supervisor had called that morning, wondering why he didn't show up for his 7:30 a.m. shift. His mother's story about him being there all night started crumbling when neighbors reported seeing Deshawn's truck leave around 1 a.m. and return before sunrise. Most damning of all were the autopsy results. Zara had been strangled slowly and deliberately by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Someone who'd taken their time. Someone who wanted her to suffer. The medical examiner found defensive wounds on her hands. She'd fought back with everything she had. She'd fought for her life, for her children, for the future she'd finally dared to believe in. Deshawn's mother became even more vocal as evidence mounted against her son. She organized prayer circles for Deshawn, launched social media campaigns proclaiming his innocence, shared old family photos of Deshawn with his children. "My son is a good man," she declared to reporters daily outside the courthouse. First, that woman destroyed his life with her abuse lies, and now the system is trying to frame him again. "Someone else killed her, and y'all need to find the real killer instead of persecuting my baby." But the jury saw through the deception. After deliberating for 12 hours over 2 days, they returned with a verdict that echoed through that courthouse like thunder: guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Deshawn to life in prison without possibility of parole. As the gavel fell, Deshawn's mother's screams filled the courtroom. "This isn't justice. Y'all just murdered an innocent man. That evil woman is still destroying lives from beyond the grave." Even then, even with her son convicted of murder, she couldn't acknowledge the truth. She couldn't admit that the monster she'd raised and protected had finally done what everyone feared he would do. This has been True Crime Journal, where every story matters and every voice deserves to be heard with dignity and truth. Stay vigilant out there, and remember, silence isn't protection when lives are at stake. Until next time, keep seeking justice for those who can't speak for themselves.